Top 5 Most Terrifying Natural Phenomena in history. There are forces on this planet powerful enough to wipe a city off the map in a single moment. Forces that can turn a bright blue sky dark as night and make the very ground we stand on betray us. These aren't monsters from a movie, they're the raw and tame power of nature. From the crushing force of an earthquake to the silent, creeping death of a famine, humanity has always lived at the mercy of the world around us. We build our homes on fault lines and our cities on coastlines, knowing that the very things that sustain us can also become our undoing. Today, we're counting down 5 of the most terrifying natural events ever recorded, ranked by their sheer destructive power and the heartbreaking loss of life. We'll journey through history to witness disasters that didn't just reshape the landscape, but changed the course of human society itself. These are the moments that serve as a grim reminder of just how fragile we are. The 2010 Haiti earthquake, coming in at number 5, is a disaster whose horror was amplified by where it struck. The 2010 Haiti earthquake, on the afternoon of January 12, a magnitude 7.0 earthquake hit just 16 miles west of Port-au-Prince, Haiti's densely packed capital. For a country already struggling with deep poverty and fragile infrastructure, the impact was apocalyptic. The ground shook for less than a minute, but that was all it took to unleash a wave of destruction that would cripple the nation for years. The death toll was catastrophic, with some estimates reaching as high as 316,000 people. In seconds, over 250,000 homes and 30,000 commercial buildings collapsed into rubble. The images that came out were harrowing. The iconic National Palace, a symbol of the nation, had pancaked into itself. Hospitals, schools, and government buildings were reduced to dust. The very infrastructure needed to mount a response was gone in an instant, with 60% of hospitals destroyed and 1 in 10 of the country's medical professionals killed in the quake. The aftermath was pure chaos. Survivors with brutal injuries were treated under what doctors on the ground called Civil War medical conditions, often without anesthetic or clean water. What followed was one of the largest humanitarian aid responses in history. The world watched as rescue teams from dozens of countries flew to Haiti, pulling survivors from the rubble against all odds. But the challenges were staggering. The main airport and seaport were severely damaged, creating a logistical nightmare. Over 1.5 million people were left homeless, forced into sprawling makeshift camps with little to no sanitation. This led to a second crisis. 9 months after the quake, a deadly cholera outbreak tore through the camps, claiming thousands more lives.
Years later, the recovery is still painfully slow. The 2010 Haiti earthquake wasn't the strongest ever recorded, but its impact on a vulnerable, concentrated population made it one of the deadliest. It's a terrifying example of how a natural hazard can collide with social fragility to create a perfect storm of devastation. The 1970 Bola cyclone. At number 4, we head to the Bay of Bengal, a region that knows the fury of tropical cyclones all too well. On November 12, 1970, the deadliest cyclone in recorded history made landfall in what was then East Pakistan, now Bangladesh. Known as the Bola cyclone, this storm brought a level of destruction that's hard to even imagine. The wind speeds were high, up to 115 miles per hour, but the storm's real weapon was the water it pushed. As the cyclone roared ashore, it drove a massive storm surge, a wall of water up to 33 feet high that slammed into the low-lying islands of the Ganges Delta, one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Entire islands were submerged. Villages were wiped off the map in an instant. The waters swept away everything in its path: homes, crops, livestock, and people. Survivors told stories of a night of pure terror, clinging to trees as the water rose, listening to the cries of their neighbors and families being washed away into the dark. The final death toll will never be known for sure, but it's estimated that somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 people lost their lives, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in modern history. In the hardest-hit area of Tazamudin, nearly half the entire population was killed overnight. In the aftermath, the landscape was just gone. Survivors were left with nothing. Around 85% of homes in the region were destroyed, and the agricultural industry, the backbone of the economy, was completely annihilated. The tragedy was made even worse by a slow and totally inadequate government response. The military government in West Pakistan was heavily criticized for failing to get aid to the victims, leaving many to fend for themselves for days. This neglect lit a political fire. The disaster brutally exposed the tensions between the two wings of the country, and the outrage is widely credited with fueling the Bengali nationalist movement. Just a month later, an election resulted in a landslide victory for a political party that had campaigned on autonomy for East Pakistan. The Bola cyclone wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a political catalyst that directly contributed to the Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971 and the birth of a new nation, the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora. For our third most terrifying phenomenon, we have an event so powerful it literally changed the world's weather. The blast was cataclysmic, rated a 7 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, the second highest rating there is. It ejected a mind-boggling amount of rock and ash, with some estimates on total volume as high as 100 cubic kilometers, more than 25 miles up into the stratosphere. For those nearby, the eruption was hell on Earth, as pyroclastic flows superheated avalanches of gas and rock obliterated everything in their path. The immediate death toll from the blast and the tsunamis that followed was in the tens of thousands. But the eruption itself, as horrific as it was, wasn't even the worst part. The fine ash and sulfur that reached the stratosphere were carried by air currents around the globe, creating a thin veil that blocked sunlight from reaching the Earth. This triggered a volcanic winter. The year that followed, 1816, became infamous across the northern hemisphere as the year without a summer. All across Europe and North America, the weather went haywire. Summer months were marked by bitter cold and relentless rain. In New England, a strange dry fog dimmed the sun, casting an eerie reddish light. Frost and snow were reported in June, July, and August, killing off crops in the fields. In Europe, the situation was even worse. Still recovering from the Napoleonic Wars, the continent was plunged into a food crisis. Harvests failed across Great Britain, Ireland, and Germany, leading to widespread famine, food riots, and chaos. It's been called the last great subsistence crisis of the Western world. The total death toll from the blast itself and the widespread starvation and disease that followed is estimated to be at least 71,000 people. The disruption even left a cultural footprint. That gloomy, cold summer is said to have inspired Mary Shelley to write her Gothic masterpiece, Frankenstein, while stuck indoors in Switzerland. The eruption of Mount Tambora is a chilling reminder of how a single event on one side of the planet can have devastating consequences for the entire world. The 2000 for Indian Ocean tsunami. At number 2 is a disaster that unfolded live on camera, a tragedy of unimaginable scale that struck without warning on December 26, 2004. Deep beneath the Indian Ocean, off the coast of Sumatra, a monstrous undersea earthquake ripped through the seafloor. With a magnitude of 9.1, it was the third largest earthquake ever recorded. The quake was so powerful, it caused the entire planet to vibrate and triggered other earthquakes as far away as Alaska. But its deadliest effect was the displacement of a colossal amount of water, which kicked off a series of powerful tsunami waves that raced across the Indian Ocean. Traveling at the speed of a jetliner in the deep ocean, the waves were barely noticeable. But as they neared the shallow coastlines of 14 different countries, they slowed down and grew to terrifying heights, reaching over 30 meters, or nearly 100 feet tall in some of the hardest-hit locations. The first and hardest-hit area was Aceh province in Indonesia, which was slammed in less than 30 minutes. The destruction was absolute. Entire towns were simply scoured from the earth. The waves continued their relentless march, striking Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, and even reaching the coast of East Africa 7 hours later. Millions of people, many enjoying the holiday season on the beach, had no idea what was coming. The final death toll was staggering. Over 230,000 people were killed, making it one of the deadliest disasters in modern history. The human cost was immense. Families were torn apart and entire communities were lost. The psychological trauma for the survivors, many of whom lost everyone they loved, has lingered for years, with studies showing long-term PTSD and depression. The 2000 for tsunami was a brutal wake-up call. At the time, there was no tsunami warning system in the Indian Ocean. In the aftermath, a global effort was launched to change that, establishing a network of seismic sensors and ocean buoys designed to detect tsunamis and issue warnings. While the physical rebuilding in many areas has been remarkable, the tsunami left behind scars that will never fully fade on the land, on societies, and in the memory of a generation that witnessed the terrifying, indiscriminate power of the ocean. The 1931 Yangtze River floods. And here we are, at number 1. A catastrophe of such a mind-bending scale that it stands as the deadliest natural disaster in recorded history, the 1931 China floods. The stage for this disaster was set by years of bizarre weather. A long drought had plagued China, but then the patterns flipped. The winter of 1930 brought heavy snow, and the spring of 1931 brought relentless rain, saturating the ground and swelling the rivers. Then came the cyclones. In July 1931 alone, 7 cyclones battered the region. The average is per year. All of these factors came together in the worst possible way. 3 of China's major rivers, the Yangtze, the Huai, and the Yellow River, all burst their banks. The result wasn't just a flood, it was the drowning of a vast portion of central China. An area the size of England and half of Scotland combined was completely submerged. The capital city of Nanjing became an island. The metropolis of Wuhan was underwater for months, with floodwaters reaching an astonishing 53 feet above normal.
The immediate death toll from drowning was estimated at over 150,000 people. But that was just the start. The floodwaters destroyed everything. An estimated 15% of all wheat and rice crops in the Yangtze Valley were wiped out. This led to a devastating famine. Survivors had nothing to eat, and reports from the time described people eating tree bark, weeds, and even dirt to survive. After the famine came disease. With sanitation systems gone and huge areas of stagnant, polluted water, illnesses like cholera and typhus spread like wildfire through the displaced and malnourished population. The combination of drowning, starvation, and disease created a death toll that is almost beyond belief. The total number is almost impossible to pin down. Conservative estimates start around 400,000, but when you factor in the famine and disease that followed, some reports from the time suggest a staggering final number between 3.7 and 4 million people. More than 50 million people were affected. The 1931 China floods represent the absolute peak of nature's destructive power, history's most terrifying reminder of the power of water to both give life and, in the most horrific way, take it away. Honorable mentions. While our top 5 are in a league of their own, history is filled with other terrifying events worth mentioning. The 1883 eruption of Krakatoa, also in Indonesia, produced the loudest sound in recorded history, heard nearly 3,000 miles away. It released energy equivalent to 200 megatons of TNT and generated tsunamis that killed over 36,000 people. More recently, the 2020 Tonga Hapai eruption was the largest underwater explosion ever recorded by modern instruments. It blasted a plume of water vapor and ash 58 kilometers into the sky and sent a tsunami across the Pacific. The explosion was so powerful its atmospheric shockwaves circled the planet multiple times, giving scientists a ton of new data on how these massive submarine eruptions affect our atmosphere. Conclusion in CTA. From the shaking earth of Haiti, to the world-altering blast of Tambra, to the unimaginable floods of the Yangtze River, these events are powerful, humbling, and frankly, terrifying. They show us that no matter how advanced we get, we are still living on a dynamic and powerful planet, subject to forces far beyond our control. The lessons learned from these tragedies have pushed us to create better warning systems, stronger building codes, and more effective ways to help in a crisis. But they also serve as a constant reminder that we need to be prepared, resilient, and ready to work together, especially as our changing climate may make extreme events like these even more common. If you found this look at nature's terrifying power fascinating, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the forces that shape our world. Let us know in the comments which one of these events do you find the most terrifying. Thanks for watching.